welcome to this review of my Ortek MCK-101SX. Ortek is a now fairly well-known manufacturer of mostly Alps-based vintage keyboards. I've previously reviewed its smaller brother, the MCK-84, and its big-ass brother, the MCK-142 Pro, because 144% form factors rule, yeah! Ironically, while this is the last of the three Ortek brothers to be reviewed on this channel, it's easily the most common one among them. I got this one very cheaply from a community member in Australia as part of a batch of keyboards. It was originally really quite dirty, but it cleaned up surprisingly well. It's high time I covered one of these on the channel anyway, as it's a bit of a classic, so I'm quite pleased with it. The MCK in the model name appears to stand for multi-compatible keyboard, which is what I'm guessing they mean by ATXT switchable. This is achieved with this switch here, which is unconventionally labeled 8088, 8286, so after the CPU rather than their respective classes, XT and AT. It was originally set to XT, which means that arrow keys output numbers and other stuff like that. If you're ever in a situation where your board is confusing numbers, arrows and nav commands, that's likely what's going on. Just set it to AT and the problem should resolve itself. As this keyboard is far more modern than most XT class computers, it was likely a retrofit or used as a layout upgrade. There is also an OEM Max MCK-101, which looks completely different, more like a Chicone 5161 or an Alps AX keyboard, but it's still an Ortek product as betrayed by its FCC ID and Ortek's signature metallic model sticker. The model sticker on this Ortek, note the similarities, also shows that it's the SX model. Sometimes the FCC ID and model number are in conflict on these keyboards, which appears to be because they didn't file an FCC ID for the FX model. Regardless, the SX version appears to be the one that uses genuine Alps switches, while the rest uses Alps clones. This one indeed uses genuine Alps switches, pine white ones to be more specific, and while certainly not perfect, they're not as bad as I would have expected for a board this dirty. I give them maybe a 6 or even a 7 out of 10. They're probably still in the salvageable stadium. With some work I could probably upgrade them to an 8 or so, possibly a 9. I do have 250 no old stock pine white Alps switches that I snagged a while ago, but to be honest there's boards that deserve them far more than this one does. And I'm saying that because although Ortek made some decent keyboards back in the day, this is definitely one of the more cheaply made ones, feeling quite subpar in many areas actually, especially compared to their other keyboards. This board weighs just over a kilo, which is not a lot for a vintage full-size like this. It's much heavier than your average modern full-size rubber dome crap, but honestly I'm not sure it's built much better. Even the mounting plate, which tends to be at least thin metal on even the more badly built Alps-based keyboards, is plastic and the whole thing flexes fairly badly. The plastic shell is thin but okay to be honest, but overall I think this wouldn't stand up to all that much abuse really. It looks pretty shoddy too. I mean, look at this Loctite bank. It must be the cheapest one I've ever seen. They didn't even bother to put an overlay on it or even just paint the fucking lettering on it for fuck's sake. And so they just had the window frames and lettering molded into the case so it's barely legible and just really crap looking overall. I mean, Jesus Christ, how much more would it have cost them to just put a little Loctite stick here to make it look a bit more non-hobo? Jeez. The keycaps, which are tie-how TI double shots on some Ortek models, are just silk-screened thin ABS keycaps in this case, and several have lettering that started to fade as a result. They sound okay with the switches, but this is another point that really could have used an upgrade in my opinion. Moreover, the electronics seem to be having a fit. Sometimes when you're typing, the lock lights start to stutter, which doesn't give me a whole load of confidence. In fact, the solder work and the whole board looks pretty shoddy, and as if to prove my point, the keyboard suddenly stopped working yesterday evening just before I started filming, and it won't come on anymore, so yeah. It's got simple flip-out feet at the bottom and a rather standard coiled 5-pin DIN cable, plus a 2-way cable gutter. Not much to talk about here. Just about the one thing they did indulge on a little bit is its signature shortcut key card bank at the top. This plastic cover on top can be moved back to reveal a little flipbook of cards that showed F-key functions of popular DOS programs like WordPerfect and WordStar and Lotus 123, and you could use the other side to write your own shortcut cards as well. It doesn't close properly, unfortunately, though. It's very similar to the Focus FK5001's card bank, although that one is repositionable, much bigger, includes more cards, and feels more elegantly executed in my opinion. Still, it's a nice feature, and arguably the only thing that makes it stand out, as it would otherwise have been an extremely overlookable keyboard. This one's missing the badge that would otherwise be here. Well, when I say badge, I actually mean hatch. It's just a panel here with no markings that you can remove to access the... Well, actually, there's nothing underneath it, so I don't know what you could access with it. What the actual fuck on a stick is the whole point of this thing even? just as a placeholder for rebrand badges or something. That's kind of ugly. An interesting notion is the layout, which is a fairly standard layout for Asian keyboards intended for the Western market, and includes a big-ass enter but also a tiny backspace key, which is rather annoying, and I don't think I've ever seen one of these without this arrangement either, which is kind of ironic considering both its smaller and bigger brothers, the MCK-84 and MCK-142 Pro, appear to have only come with ISO-style enter keys and full-size backspaces instead. Strange. I don't know how useful the F-key strip is nowadays, as the keys are not natively programmable. Perhaps if you used an external converter or some other program to stick macros or custom hotkeys on them, they might be useful, but for most it'll just be visual flair. And of course this one still at least has genuine white Alps, which is a virtue of its own, but those are really the only 2 plus points I can see about this board. It's really shoddily made, has shit keycaps, the layout is slightly poop, it's not even a particularly good looking model in my opinion. Worse, there's tons of keyboards with white Alps around. I mean, a Focus 2001, Chicone 5161, or a Monterey K104, or any of the other million billion cheap white Alps boards will do the same, except better, and they'll probably look better too. Or if you were into something a bit more upmarket, a Northgate OmniKey will make a much more solid choice in basically every single way. It's built like a tank, weighs more than twice as much as the Ortek, comes with double-shot keycaps, and is available in better layouts and or with programmable macro keys. So yeah, overall it's okay, I guess, but for a white Alps board I'd call it subpar. The F-key strip is a novelty, but even that was done better by other boards like the FK5001 and 9000. It's not horrible, I wouldn't encourage you to stay away from it or anything, just be aware that you can easily get better than this for what should be around the same amount of money. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.